Part 102. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1012. Zhang Hongai's parents died early. He suffered a lot in order to survive. Yingzhou is a place where people cannibalize people. If you are a little weak, you may be bitten to the bone. He only cares about making friends. Brother, if you are so fierce and indulgent in evil, if you are thinking of learning how to kill pigs, if you are thinking of how to survive and make a living, when will you be able to comb your hair in such a leisurely manner? In my impression, even when his parents were reborn, they had never been so attentive to him. He was a boy, and his parents were busy working for a living, so they would not have raised him so seriously and carefully. Zhang Hong'ai did not feel that such a life was valuable in the past. Why is it bad, but now someone is washing his hair, someone is combing his hair, the movements are so gentle, the words are so nice, and he even likes the force of the blow on his head, he knows that he is finished. He touched his hair and giggled. When Lily asked him if he had any unpleasantness with his brothers at noon, he didn't say anything. He hummed songs all afternoon and was having fun until dinner. Lily ignored him. She was still gloomy for a while, but she was happy in the afternoon. She put away the dishes, boiled a pot of bath water and wiped her body with the cold. When she returned to the room, she saw Zhang Hong'ai sitting by the bed, smiling and sad at times. Yes, he was about to sleep. His hair was still neatly tied up. Lily gathered her clothes and reached out to take them off for him. He was quite alert. He raised his head and stared at Lily defensively. "What are you doing?" Zhang Hong'ai felt that Lily's hand was heading straight for his head, and he quickly reached out to protect his bun, while falling down on the bed. "Don't touch my hair anymore, it's messy. Tomorrow how to meet people? It sounds like you usually have your hair neatly trimmed. I'll just take it off and tie it up again tomorrow." Lily pulled the clothes around her shoulders tighter. When Zhang Hong'ai heard this, she shrank further into the bed and kept shaking her head. "I won't comb my hair today. I'm not as dishonest as you, and I won't be messy when sleeping. I'll sleep with you quickly and leave me alone," Lily said so easily. He also refused to remove his hair. After doing it for a long time, Lily seemed to have come back to her senses and thought for a moment, "Don't you want your newly combed hair to be torn apart today so that you can go out and show off to others tomorrow?" Her words suddenly seemed to speak the truth. Zhang Hong'ai became a little angry. "It's none of your business whether or not I can sleep. It's already dark, and I have to get up early tomorrow." Unexpectedly, he really thought so, and Lily wanted to laugh. Generally, only children will be reluctant to leave when faced with new things. How old is Zhang Hong'ai? What's more, she can't see that he, who was such a slovenly person before, would care so much about his hair. She treats him like a child and coaxes him. Promised him to get up early tomorrow morning and comb his hair again. Zhang Hong'ai was hesitant at first, but later he saw that Lily was serious about it. Thinking that they had been together for a few days, Lily had never told a lie to deceive him, so he finally believed it. When Lily grinned and let her hair fall apart, her expression was still a bit ugly. The hair that was combed for the first time was not fresh for a long time before it was torn off. Unfortunately, Lily didn't see his resentful eyes. She untied Zhang Hong'ai's hair. When Zixi turned around and went to bed, Zhang Hong'ai turned to look at her, and when Lily turned around when he looked at him, he quickly looked away and closed his eyes. After getting along for a long time, Lily found that Zhang Hong'ai was not difficult to get along with. He didn't have a particularly good temper. Sometimes he spoke loudly when he was anxious, but he usually looked fierce. In fact, when the two of them got along, Zhang Hong'ai would mostly say 2 sentences, but if Lily got anxious and stretched out her hand to beat him, he would not dare to fight back. Most of the time he would hide. For 2 months, he still got up early every day to kill pigs and sell meat, and came back early. Almost every day, he would come back with a piece of pork left over. In the afternoon, he would either cut some bamboo at home and make something for home use or sell it. Occasionally, he would be directed by Lily to do some housework. For example, he took apart the quilts at home and washed them. He even cut down the wood frame beams again because the lilies in the room they lived in were too dark, which was equivalent to repairing the house. He seemed to have had a falling out with his brothers last time, and they haven't interacted with each other since then. But just because he didn't go out to drink and eat meat with his brothers, he had saved some money in the past few months. 4 months passed by in a flash, and the Chinese New Year was just a few days away. During this period, there were a lot of pig killings, so Zhang Hongyi immediately started to get busy. Unlike before, he went out early and returned early. Now he went out in the morning and sometimes had to arrive. She just came back in the evening. Lily has been practicing Xin Chen Taijutsu in the past few months. Just because Zhang Hongyi was at home most of the time, she didn't have much time to practice, but there were still changes. In the past few months, due to eating well and being well fed, Lily's cheeks have become plumper. Unlike the skinny skin before, she has gained some meat, and because of her physical training, she looks yes, but it was just right. When the original owner was raised in a boudoir, she was famous for her beauty. Now that Lily has entered the body, her temperament and body are no worse than the original owner. Zhang Hongyi has guarded her even more closely and has to warn her before going out every day. Don't go out for several times. The window had been dug larger because of Lily's request, and now it could fully accommodate a person to get in and out. Even if he locked the door, it would not help. Fortunately, during his free time some time ago, he had raised the wall of his home. Every day when he goes out, as long as he has free time, he will try his best to go home, come back to see if Lily is okay, and say a few words to her. Even if he is beaten out, he feels at ease. After a few days like this, he's still with the Chinese New Year approaching in 2 days, the number of people looking for him to kill pigs gradually decreased. When the two of them soaked their feet and climbed into bed at night, Zhang Hongyi lay on his side on the bed. He didn't know what he was counting, but he could only hear the sound of ding 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 dang copper coins, which sounded like dozens of coins. He started to earn money by killing pigs. Since it was not much, he spent most of it with himself. After saving the money recently, he kept it at home. This should be the money he earned today. Lily listened to him counting it over and over several times, and then when I heard him fiddling there, I couldn't help it anymore and turned to glare at him. Zhang Hongyi, have you finished counting? Recently, he went out early and came back late at night. If he didn't go to bed earlier, he wouldn't be able to sleep for a few hours at all. He heard Lily shout suddenly, his hands shook, and a ding-dong dang-dang sound sounded. The pile of copper coins fell into a ball, and he became a little angry. He hurriedly propped up half of his strong body, touched the bed with one hand, and complained. The sudden words shocked me. Look where I counted, but then forgot, and the money jumped to nowhere. This time I have to count again. You are so cowardly, why did I scare you when I said something? He didn't sleep himself and made others uneasy. Lily lifted the quilt and got out of bed, put on slippers, sat on his bed, and put him on the bed. The arm holding the money was lifted. During their recent days together, she had figured out Zhang Hongyi's character. He was hard on the outside and soft on the inside. She was not afraid of what he would do to her. On the contrary, Zhang Hongyi was frightened by her approach. When she lifted him up, he shrank to the corner of the bed holding the quilt. He went in, his face turned red, and he didn't dare to look at her while his eyes were wandering around. He said loudly, "It's scary to scare people to death. How can you be cowardly? What's more, you are just talking now. Who knows whether you will be able to do it next moment, beater." As soon as he finished speaking, Lily couldn't help but stretched out her hand and slapped him. He was wearing single clothes while sleeping. When he hit his arm, there was a pop sound, but he didn't feel any pain. Lily's palm felt a bit hot due to the shock. He acted as if nothing was wrong and was still proud. "Look, did you hit me?" He looked like a villain who had hit the mark. The shrinking look on his face made people unable to bear it. Lily wanted to reach out and hit him again. The person Zhang Hong'ai was hit didn't feel any pain, but the one who hit him hurt his own hand. But he had one good thing, that was, the hit was on him. Regardless of whether it hurts or not, he would scream ouch, as if he was being tortured, which made the person who beat him feel particularly accomplished. Lily didn't want to hit him at first, but he was sometimes unbearable. After beating him, he screamed twice, and then Lily started to touch him on the bed. After a while, she found a lot of money. After a brief count, I found that there were more than a few dozen coins, probably hundreds of coins, and there were a lot of them spread out on the bed. She counted the money in threes. Zhang Hong'ai's expression softened when he saw her lowering her head to count the money. At first she pretended to be impatient and hit him, but Zhang Hong'ai actually knew that Lily was very patient and that she was just joking when she hit him sometimes. Knowing that she was joking, he would also scream in response. Zhang Hong'ai actually couldn't help but want to laugh every time he saw the way she laughed when he called her. She counted the money seriously. This action was full of the smell of copper, but when she did it, in Zhang Hong'ai's eyes, she just said no, look good. The lights hadn't been turned off in the room yet. Under the dim light, half of her white and tender face had already gained some baby fat. The girl's jade-like skin was like the winter melon that had just grown from the tender seedlings after the flowers had fallen. The fluff seems to be powdered, making people want to touch it. She had been well nursed back to health after several months. Her face showed a healthy and moist red cloud, her lips were pursed tightly, and her two black eyes were like the most beautiful gems Zhang Hong'ai had ever seen. Because she was going to bed at night, she took off her hair. The smooth and thick hair was spread over her shoulders and tucked behind her ears, exposing her beautiful chin. The girl sat not far away from him. Although she didn't touch him, the vague aura on her body made Zhang Hong'ai feel as if a deer was living in his heart. The dong 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 heartbeat sounded as loud as the heart of his heart. Jumping out of his chest, he felt a little guilty inexplicably, as if he was afraid that some of his thoughts would be discovered by Lily, so he suddenly stretched out his iron palm-like hand and slapped his heart, hoping to use this to hide his fast and loud heartbeat. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1013. The sound made Lily pause counting the money, raised her head slightly and looked at him with a surprised look on her face. "What are you doing?" This attracted her attention, which made Zhang Hong'ai feel even more embarrassed than if he hadn't attracted her attention just now. When she spoke, her beautiful lips opened and closed. Her lips were not like those of many women. Dry, maybe because she likes to drink water. Her lips look full, like flowers that have absorbed enough water, with a bright red color. That face is so beautiful no matter how beautiful it is. Zhang Hong'ai licked his dry lips and was a little dumbfounded again. The heartbeat seemed to be getting faster and faster. Lily stared at him. He couldn't control his heart. The more he tried to calm down, the faster it beat. Zhang Hong'ai was a little flustered and tried harder as if to cover it up. After being beaten twice, she stared at her and stammered. "Maybe I ate too much at night and it's stuck in my throat. I haven't swallowed it yet." I patted it and maybe it went down, he pretended and swallowed twice. After saying this, Lily looked at him as if he was crazy. She glanced at him, ignored him, and lowered her head to count her money. Only when Zhang Hong'ai reacted did he realize that he had said something stupid. It had been almost an hour since he had eaten. If he was still stubborn, he would have been choked long ago. How could he still be sitting here talking to her now? He thought that what he said was wrong, and he wanted to find another excuse to explain, but seeing the way she just lowered her head and counted the money and ignored him, he couldn't find the beginning of the topic, so he could only force himself to say, "Why tonight, have you been stalking me for so long? If you were normal, you would have swallowed it long ago. Okay, don't be stupid. There are $135 here. Have you earned so much today?" Lily counted the money and put it into a pile for him. When she saw the bag with the money, she gave it to him. He put it in and tied the rope at the mouth of the bag tightly. Just as he was about to get up and go back to his bed, Zhang Hongyi called her out. Daughter-in-law. He usually opened his mouth and called her daughter-in-law. Lily started to say that to him several times, saying that she had not agreed to marry him, but he didn't listen. Instead, he treated it as if he was losing his temper with him. He still called himself, and said several times that Lily would be left to him. When he opened his mouth, Mamama was stunned for a moment. Zhang Hongyi sat up and crawled over. He squeezed her hand. He reached out to touch her waist again, but Lily slapped the back of his hand, and he laughed twice. Regardless of her objections, he still went to squeeze it. There was no obscenity in his expression. Lily suppressed a smile and waited until he finished grabbing her. Then he pulled her to stand up and compared her height. She couldn't help but pinch the back of Zhang Hongyi's hand, and he grinned and sucked in the cold air. "Be gentle, be gentle. What on earth are you going to do?" He didn't put the money in the place where he usually kept it. Instead, he put it next to the pillow. Lily let him pinch and touch it, and now she grabbed the back of his hand, and he spoke softer and softer. "Son," the longer she didn't let him go, Zhang Hongyi didn't struggle anymore. His hands were still on her waist. When she asked her questions, his eyes began to roll around again. It was embarrassing to see him like this. "I'm about to celebrate the new year. I haven't had much work these 2 days, and I don't want to do it. I want to buy you some clothes." Everyone wears new clothes during the new year. When he said this, his expression seemed a little awkward, so pretending to be nonchalant for a while, he asked, "What color do you like? I saw a young woman came to buy pork last time, and she would look good in that cyan color." He had seen Lily dressed in tatters before, and thought of wearing casual clothes. After hearing this, if every woman he saw wore better clothes, he would automatically change his face to look like a lily in his mind, thinking that if his wife wore it, she would definitely look much better than others. Recently, he has earned more copper coins. He has given up drinking and has stopped interacting with his brothers. It happened to be the time for the Chinese New Year. He also wanted to buy some clothes and let Lily make new ones. There are also shoes. "I want to see what size you wear." After he finished speaking, he gestured twice with his hands. He once caught the lily-footed ones, but now that he talked about it, his cheeks and ears turned red again. He wanted to give them again. She measured it, but just thinking about it in her mind made her heart beat faster again. Zhang Hongyi retracted his hand in a panic, as if he had any thoughts in his heart that would be seen by others, and he slipped the bed from under the bed. He pulled out a piece of straw and handed it to Lily, as if to cover up the panic in his heart, and shouted in a rough voice, "Compare and tie a knot for me, so I know what to do." Lily stretched out her hand to take it, not even daring to look at him in the eyes, and deliberately teased him. "Zhang Hongyi, you are so brave. Now you are selling me just staring at the little woman. Is she so beautiful? Don't be ashamed." As soon as she finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi almost choked on his own saliva. His face turned red and he almost jumped off the bed. He pointed at Lily, with a look of innocence, and yelled, "You wronged me, I didn't." In the past, his voice was always loud when he felt guilty, but he was not as excited as when he acted this time. The veins in his neck were about to pop out. He was foaming at the mouth when he spoke. The hand pointing at Lily was shaking and his eyes were shaking. Eyes bulging out of his eyes. No? You just said it yourself. Last time, a little woman came to buy pork. She looked good in that cyan color. Didn't you stare at her? The more excited he became, the more Lily deliberately stimulated him. Almost jumping to her feet in anxiety, Lily suppressed her laughter and pretended to be impatient and climbed into bed. Okay, I'm going to sleep anyway, I don't care if you stare at others or not. You're talking nonsense. I obviously didn't mean that. Why did you fall asleep before I finished speaking? Zhang Hong'ai was dumbfounded. After thinking about it for a few words, it didn't sound right. He simply got out of bed and stood beside Lily's bed. I just looked at her. The clothes she is wearing clearly do not mean that she is good looking. It is just that the clothes she is wearing are good looking, not that she is good looking. I have never seen what she looks like. Humph! Lily carried him and snorted. Zhang Hong'ai became more anxious and said louder, I didn't stare at him, you wronged me. He stretched out his hand to pull Lily and explain the matter clearly, but Lily ignored him, and he did not dare to make a move. When he spoke in a hurry, Lily turned around and said, I didn't wrong you. If you don't remember what happened to my family, how come you still remember what she is wearing? She was sharp-tongued and spoke calmly. Zhang Hong'ai felt a rush of blood rush to his forehead. He was no match for Lily when he spoke in excitement, even though his voice became louder and louder. Big, but showing an anxious look. He committed a taboo among military strategists. During an argument, those with louder voices would usually be unable to control those with lower voices. Moreover, the more easily excited someone was, the more likely they would get angrier later on. At this time, Zhang Hong'ai felt that she was so angry that he was jumping up and down. He knew clearly that it was not the case, but he couldn't tell her. He felt anxious and his whole body tensed up. He even clenched his fists instinctively and held the hand in his hand. Both sides of the legs. What are you going to do? Lily sat up. Her petite figure was less than the height of his chest when she sat on the bed, but she asked him until he was exhausted, I just said you wronged me. Zhang Hong'ai was a little confused. Before he had done anything, Lily had already raised her hand to hit him. He raised his hand to block her, shouting, oh, why are you so unreasonable and you start beating people? He felt a little aggrieved. Aren't you just saying that other people's clothes are pretty? You have to say that I'm staring at them. Why am I staring at them? In my heart, no one is as good looking as you. I'd rather go home and stare at you. Lily slapped his hand and paused when she heard what he said. He saw the opportunity quickly and quickly held her wrist with his backhand. The girl's wrist was as thin as brittle white porcelain, as if it would break if he exerted force. He didn't dare to use too much force, but Lily struggled again, fearing that she would hit him again, so she hit him. In fact, it didn't hurt, but under the firelight, her palms were all red. Zhang Hong'ai burst out of anger for no reason. Seeing that she was dishonest, he sat down on the bed, pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. He strangled her waist to prevent her from moving, then put her hand to the fire and looked at it. Look, they're all red. He didn't mean that his hands were red, but that the palms of Lily's hands were red when she beat him. The beater didn't hurt the person, but hurt himself. Her fingertips were long and slender, and her nails were round and shiny, like fine pearls, glowing a healthy pink color. There were some pear dimples on the back of her hands, which were slightly boneless, but a faint trace of light could be seen between the knuckles. The little yellow callus was gone, and Zhang Hong'ai felt annoyed and uncomfortable for some reason. This was the first time he yelled at someone so fiercely, unlike the usual shouting and playing. Lily used to hit him, and he only knew how to hide. Now he hugged him tightly, and Lily felt that he was really strong. She practiced star training. Although she didn't practice for a long time every day, She had already laid a certain foundation because she had been on the mission for several months. Despite her weak appearance, a grown man might not be able to beat her, but Zhang Hongyi seemed to be able to beat her until she couldn't move without using much strength. She stretched out her legs to kick him, but Zhang Hongyi saw that she was restless, so he held her on the bed and stretched out his legs to sandwich her legs between them. When they reacted, the two of them were already close to each other, with the girl's soft body pressed against his chest. Zhang Hongyi vaguely remembered the time when he brought her back from the post house. She was skinny at that time, but unlike now, her body is slim and graceful, and the delicate parts are not easy to grasp. Her body is as soft as willow, and the girl's skin is full of elasticity. You can feel it through your clothes. With a boom sound, something seemed to explode in his head. The blood flow in his body accelerated. His body stiffened, but his hands and feet began to tremble. The hands that originally held her no longer dared to hold her, as if they were full of blood. It's all fragrant and full of softness. I dare not touch it anywhere, but if I want him to let go, I feel unwilling to do anything. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1014. The accelerated heartbeat and blood flow made Zhang Hongyi feel cold all over, but for some reason, a fire seemed to be lit in his body, making his mouth dry, and he always wanted to do something. He didn't dare to stare at Lily, but the breath of the girl was pervasive. He could feel the breath of her body when he breathed, and his body could clearly feel the temperature of her body, as well as her flexible and petite figure. He moved Lily, he suppressed her even tighter, even though he didn't dare to look at her, he couldn't help but think about her. When he was a little dumbfounded, Zhang Hongyi only saw Lily staring at him. Just now he subconsciously let go of her hand. At this time, her hand was raised, one hand was on his chest, and the other was raised high. Under the light, the soft skin of the fingertips looked like peeled lychees, white and tender, as if transparent, and the capillaries in the fingertips could be vaguely seen. This hand is so pretty. This is his wife? Zhang Hongyi smiled stupidly, and the hand got closer and closer. When he realized that something was not right, Lily's palm had already hit him in the middle of the face with a snap. Because of the posture of the two of them, she didn't slap him in the face, but she slapped him right in the center of his face. When it hit his face, it actually didn't hurt. Zhang Hongyi even felt it first. It's the slightly cool temperature of the hand, which is very comfortable. He reached out and put Lily's hand on his face, not allowing her to pull away. He felt itchy in his heart, as if some bubble had fermented. Zhang Hongyi, let me go. You are getting thicker and thicker, she cursed and kicked her legs wildly. Zhang Hongyi giggled hee and wanted to do something. He beat her and was reluctant to let go, touching her as if she would fall out. He thought of the one-year agreement he had promised her before, and his intestines turned green with regret. Don't let go. If you let go, you'll hit me. He pressed Lily's hand and grinned. The palm of his hand touched his lips, as if there was a small piece of plump, tender, and juicy meat beside his mouth. Zhang Hongyi, I don't know what I think. Suddenly he opened his mouth and took a bite. He didn't use much force. Because when he bit into it, he felt like his teeth were sinking into the soft cotton candy heart. It was obviously not sweet, but his heart was filled with circles. But it was like melted syrup. At that moment, the strength of his hand that was originally pressing on the back of Lily's hand became much weaker. He relaxed his hand, and Lily exclaimed, withdrawing her hand as if she was electrocuted. Zhang Hongyi did not dare to bite too hard. Afraid of hurting her, she pulled it back smoothly, but the texture of biting the palm was like glutinous rice cake dipped in sugar, soft and cottony, with a very elastic texture. I remember when I was a child, I don't know when I had eaten it. Zhang Hong'ai thought he had forgotten the taste, but now he remembered it because of the action of biting her palm. When his mouth was empty, he licked his lips, as if he still had something to say. "Why are you biting?" Lily wanted to reach out and slap him, but she was afraid of being caught again and bit him again. The bite didn't hurt, but when she bit her palm gently, it itched so much that it felt like crawling. "Got a bug?" Seeing that he was not the least bit embarrassed after biting someone, he looked like a sneaky cat. His ears were reddish, and he was still grinning stupidly, looking like he was out of his body. What he just said was, without hearing anything, Lily stretched out her hand and pinched the back of his hand. He came back to his senses this time and started to scream ouch, but he didn't hide away. Okay, let me go, but you have to agree not to hit me again." The redness in his ears has not gone away. Even though it is not daytime, he can see clearly under the light. "Like, what are you talking about? Do you think any wife in the family always beats her own man? If you do this, where will I put my face when I go out? And no one is big or small. Now I have been beaten on the face. If there are any marks left, you will let me know tomorrow. What should I say?" he muttered, and reluctantly moved his legs away. Lily retracted her legs that were clamped by him, stretched out her legs and kicked him. He was so tall that he couldn't keep his face from the kick. Lily's feet hurt. "I told you not to hit me," he muttered a few words, hesitated, then stretched out his hand to rub Lily's feet. Seeing that she just wanted to dodge, she impatiently raised them up as if to bite again, and Lily quickly retracted her legs. When he went back, the foot was held in his palm, as if it was stuck in iron pliers, unable to struggle at all. Lily lay back on the bed, holding her hands behind her back and barely keeping herself upright. She kicked him twice with her other leg, but was also caught by him. She glared at Zhang Hong'ai and said, "Let go. Don't let go. If you kick me again, I'll bite you." He was triumphant, and deliberately lowered his head to bite her. Seeing Lily struggling again, he couldn't help but laugh triumphantly, as if he had grasped something. "Like a sword, he looks like a villain who has succeeded. If you have to force me to punish you, if you know how to hit someone, I can do something about it. Are you scared?" As he said this, he spread Lily's legs. This action caused her skirt to slide up, revealing a piece of white sex. His calf felt like an electric shock, and he subconsciously wanted to release it, but then he seemed to remember something, closed his eyes and hurriedly pulled on her skirt to cover her legs. But he was so strong that with this pull Lily felt like the skirt on her legs was about to be ripped off by him. If he hadn't closed his eyes tightly and half closed his eyes like he was cheating, Lily would have suspected that he did it on purpose. Zhang Hong'ai's hands were shaking, as if he was extremely nervous. Lily grabbed the skirt around her waist and shook her legs helplessly. "What are you doing? My skirt is about to be ripped off." "Ah, I didn't mean to do it." This time he was not stubborn. Instead, he blushed and apologized quickly. He held Lily's legs under his armpits, covered her legs tightly with her skirt, and groped around for 2 seconds. It was only then that he seemed to realize that his eyes were still closed. He opened them hurriedly, but the straw he had just thrown to her had disappeared when the two of them were struggling. Zhang Hong'ai freed his hand to pull the straw from under the bed. He inspected the soles of her 2 feet respectively, made some gestures with his palms, and then let go of her legs. After letting go, Lily pinched him twice more. He bared his teeth and shook his body nonchalantly. He took the 2 knotted straws in his hands and looked at them like treasures, frowning. "Why are they so small? Are women's feet so small? Did they measure it wrong? It shouldn't be wrong. I'll take a look again." Lily glared at him, stretched out her legs and kicked him. "Go back to sleep, I'll come back and beat you to death." He scratched his head, stuffed the straw into his arms and placed it firmly, muttering, You are so fierce and you beat people at every turn. No one can stand your temper except me. You don't want to marry me yet. Who can be as healthy as me and be beaten by you every day? Listening to him ramble on and on, Lily wanted to laugh, but she had an impatient look on her face. You can be beaten, is that still an advantage? Isn't that right? Others who were beaten like this must have run away long ago. He climbed back onto his bed triumphantly. Lily laughed at him, got up and blew out the oil lamp placed on the cabinet. The lamp flickered, and in the darkness the lanterns were still there, flickering, and Lily closed her eyes. In the past, Zhang Hong'ai could fall asleep as soon as he turned his head down, but today he had been tossing and turning for a long time and fell asleep. Lily's breathing in the room was very gentle. He went to bed early, but he, who had never pretended to be serious before, had insomnia for the first time in his life. He was thinking about how he felt when he hugged her before. He didn't feel anything at that moment. Now when he thought about it, when he grabbed her wrists, the hands and feet between them were like freshly peeled bamboo shoots. The tentacles were soft and fragrant, and her palms were covered with the soft texture. When he bit it made him grind his teeth subconsciously. Zhang Hong'ai felt itchy in his heart, always wanting to grab something, but when he came back to his senses, he found that he seemed to be unable to grab anything. In his life, he had never felt this kind of worrying about gains and losses. She slept very well. She neither snored nor grinded her teeth while sleeping, and her sleeping posture was very honest. The room became a little quiet, and the moonlight filtered in through the window. In the room, with her breath and her slow breathing, there seemed to be a peaceful atmosphere in the room, instead of the cold and humid atmosphere before. Zhang Hong'ai didn't know when he saw her excellent sleeping posture. Why, I remembered what Ye said that day, that he would be a lowly person all his life, which would make her become a lowly person with him. To be honest, he has never thought about how he wants to live. In the eyes of the nobles, he is like mud. Ordinary people in the market are afraid of him. The nobles look down on him. He doesn't care. Whatever kind of fame, fortune, and status he has, he can do whatever he wants. Is life more important? But now that there is her, Zhang Hong'ai has to think about it. He doesn't understand what it means to like someone. He doesn't understand what the books say about how literati can be romantic and talk to beauties. He really doesn't understand what those dramas say about love. He doesn't want much. He only wanted it before. Having a daughter-in-law can carry on the family line. But now it seems that he can't go back to the past. When he came back carrying this person who others thought was about to die, people laughed at him for being stupid. He really just wanted a woman at that time, and anyone would be fine. Yes, as long as someone is willing to marry him and give him a baby. But now it seems that not just any woman will do. Even if Lily doesn't want to marry him, he is not as anxious as before. Even if they have been together for so long, he has not thought about the issue of children. It seemed that a lot had changed, but he couldn't tell where exactly it had changed. Zhang Hong'ai turned over a little irritably, but his movements were cautious, fearing to wake her up. He doesn't understand love, and may not be able to describe his feelings in words compared to those who are educated. However, he knows that it is not terrible to be reduced to a lowly status, but he does not want Lily to follow him. Being ridiculed and insulted. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1015. Lily's background was different from his own. She was raised by many people and she must have been unwilling to marry him. Will people laugh at her in the future and say that she married an executioner? She was originally the rich daughter of the Marquis, but now she lives in her two broken thatched huts, cooking and washing dishes for herself every day. It can be seen that her hands were not wet with spring water before. Now she has to do this, but she doesn't complain at all. This situation is already very embarrassing. In the future, if she really becomes the executioner, if she goes out and people look at her, can she bear it? Now he can lock her in the house when he goes out, but Zhang Hongyi can't help but think of the time when she first arrived at his house. She was not as fierce and aggressive as she is now, so he cried and asked him if he wanted to lock her in the house. Originally he had good intentions and was just afraid that someone would harm her, but then he thought of what she said, "I feel like I'm in prison." The words were still ringing in her ears at this moment. She didn't mean it when she said it, but she listened with intention. She cannot be locked in the room for the rest of her life. She should not be treated like this. Zhang Hongyi clenched his fist and remembered Ye'er's words. King Yuan Wealth Road, he has no ability, but his brute strength is amazing. He has no rivals until he grows up. He is not good at literature. Although he has never learned martial arts formally, he has been fighting since he was a child. He is not good at formal martial arts, but if you fight with someone, you'll get over it. Now that you're young and don't go out to explore, could it be that when you get old in the future, you'll just stay in Yingzhou like this? Zhang Hongyi had never thought about this in detail before. He was a person who could just muddle along. But now I'm thinking about it seriously. Ye'er said that Deng Zhihu is famous for his love of provoking talented people. As long as he kills the enemy and makes meritorious deeds, as long as he fights hard for it, one day if he can be promoted based on his military merit, he might be able to. The money can help her hire a girl to wait on her. King Yuan Fugui Road. He muttered a few sentences subconsciously. When Ye'er said these words at first, he didn't think about it at all. He stayed at home. Well, there are lilies again. Naturally, he didn't want to leave her behind, but now he was hesitant. Zhang Hongyi thought about it for a long time and couldn't make up his mind. I just thought about if he left. First of all, I couldn't bear to part with it. Secondly, I am afraid that she will be bullied because she has no support at home, but let her endure hardships with him, let alone whether she is willing to do so. Zhang Hongyi also felt a little unwilling to give in. After thinking about it for a long time, Lily was woken up by the sound of him turning over, and his voice was still a little hazy. What is the road to wealth? Are you dreaming? She was half asleep, and her voice was as soft as maltose. Zhang Hongyi subconsciously wanted to grin, but he was afraid that his laughter would really wake her up. He covered his mouth and shook his head. When he realized it, she still closed his mouth. He closed his eyes, unable to see his own movements, and spoke quickly. No, she didn't know if she heard it, and fell asleep again. The moonlight shone into the room, and Zhang Hongyi suddenly reached out and touched the measured straw in his arms. Then he felt relieved and gradually closed his eyes and fell asleep. When Lily got up in the morning, Zhang Hongyi was no longer in the house. His bed was already cold. He had obviously gone out before dawn. There was bone porridge in the pot. Apparently he had set up firewood before going out, and the wood had not been burned out yet. The pot was bubbling with heat. Lily endured the cold and poured hot water to wash herself, then washed the dishes and drank 2 bowls of porridge, and then she put away the dishes. Zhang Hongyi returned home early on this day. When he came back, he said that he would not work anymore after the new year and wanted to have a good rest at home. He also said that he wanted to go out to buy some New Year goods in the afternoon. In the past, he had no energy to celebrate the Chinese New Year alone. He was the only one left in the house, and it was deserted during the Chinese New Year. He usually had his brothers to accompany him. The older brother also had family members to accompany him during the Chinese New Year, and they couldn't drink with him, so he didn't buy it in previous years. New Year's goods, I don't think celebrating the New Year is important. But things are different now. Now that there is an extra person at home, Zhang Hongyi can't help but look forward to it. This is Lily's first time going out after entering the mission, and she is also a little excited. The two have lunch, and Zhang Hongyi goes out with the money he has earned these days. Lily decided to buy the things she wanted to buy for the new year first. Although Yingzhou is a chaotic place, because it is a neighbor of foreigners, you can sometimes see some businessmen from other places entering Yingzhou. It seems that there is not a lot of people flow, and the streets are not bustling, but there are many people coming and going. Most of them people even wear the costumes of their respective tribes, which is very easy to recognize. There are a lot of stalls selling things on the street, including fur and dry goods. However, Zhou Lily's impression is that the rouge and gouache stalls sold by stalls in the capital are almost impossible to see here. On the contrary, there are many selling slingshots, daggers, and leather armor. Most of them are sold by foreign merchants, and the handles of some of the daggers are inlaid with unknown gems. The imperial government's control over iron has not reached Yingzhou. It is too chaotic and ordinary county officials cannot control it at all. The folk customs are too tough, and most officials turn a blind eye. If this place doesn't have any weapons to defend itself, I'm afraid there will be a lot of chaos in a day. If the weapons are really forced to be confiscated, I'm afraid it will arouse public resentment. When Lily went out, she covered her face at Zhang Hongyi's request. Although she was wearing shabby and bloated clothes, she still attracted a lot of people's attention when she walked next to Zhang Hongyi, who was strong and looked scary. The two went directly to the cloth store. It was just a few days before the Chinese New Year, and Zhang Hongyi wanted to choose some clothes for her. Most of the fabrics sold in the store were blue, black, and gray. Some of the silks were pink and yellow. Rose red color, the color is nice, but the price is also expensive. Zhang Hongyi reached out to touch it. The shopkeeper did not dare to offend him, but he was also afraid that the calluses on his hands would scratch his silk. Oops. He stomped his feet for days. Zhang Hezi, don't touch it. If it breaks, who will I sell it to? Who are you selling it to? My wife is here. If she likes it, I will buy it. Are you afraid that it will be damaged by touching it? Zhang Hongyi frowned, with a fierce look on his face. What's more, if you touch this thing, that's bad, that designation is fake. I'm going to smash up your shop, so shut up and stay alone. Zhang Hongyi snorted, and the shopkeeper looked helpless. He was afraid of him, but he didn't dare to be angry. De Yan huddled in the corner, shook his hands, and snorted, I don't know. This is silk. Of course it will be damaged if you touch it. Can it be compared to cloth? When Zhang Hongyi heard this, he didn't believe it. He carefully stretched out his hand and rubbed it on his clothes twice, and then reached out to touch it. It was smooth. It was indeed not comparable to the coarse cloth on his body. The satin felt soft and smooth. It was smooth, and when he looked at the ordinary coarse cloth next to it, he was a little disdainful. The color was not good to say, and it was prickly to the touch. He touched Lily's wrist yesterday and saw her exposed calf. The skin was smoother than this satin, and when the coarse cloth was worn on her body, it was probably even thicker than her skin. What's more, the dark color is indeed not very good looking. Compared with these brightly colored silks, it is much worse. He hesitated, pointed to the silk and asked, how much does this cost per foot? What, Zhang? This is the one that sells feet. This is something only used by gentlemen and ladies. If you want it, 1 foot. When the shopkeeper said this, he gritted his teeth and made a gesture, 38 cents is the minimum. No more, no less, I would rather not sell it. He was afraid that he would shout too loudly, so Zhang Hongyi got impatient and snatched it away. We all live in the same street, and this black man's reputation in Yingzhou City, who doesn't know? He is just a green-skinned little bastard who does all sorts of shady things with those gangsters. The price is indeed low. Unfortunately, Zhang Hongyi doesn't understand. In his mind, 10 yuan for a foot of coarse cloth was already considered high. This silk actually cost tens of cents per foot. He took a breath and widened his eyes. So expensive? It's not expensive anymore. Why don't you buy this kind, and I'll make it cheaper for you. Hearing that he thought it was expensive, the shopkeeper quickly came up to hug the silk, while pointing to the coarse cloth beside him. I also have green and white ones. The bottom flower is also very beautiful. If you want to buy it, I will give you 9 cents and 10 cents, and I will also give you some toppings. After the shopkeeper finished speaking, he looked at Lily again. This is your new wife, right? She's not an official wife, so there's no need to wear such fine clothes. As a woman, it's good to have new clothes. As soon as the shopkeeper's words fell, Zhang Hong'ai was stabbed in the foot. He almost jumped up. When he heard these words, he felt an unknown anger in his heart. He was even angrier than when he was called a green-skinned gangster before. He pointed at the shopkeeper's nose. Just scolded. Say it again. Why can't my wife wear silk? Just put it down for me. I'll move them all away. After he finished speaking, seeing the shopkeeper's face change, Zhang Hong'ai sneered and slapped the counter. Said loudly, if I can't pay, I will pay slowly. If I can't pay for the rest of my life, I will have a son to pay in the future. If my son can't finish paying, my grandson will continue to pay. Why, do you have any objections? He was just acting rogue. The shopkeeper's face turned pale and his lips were trembling. Seeing that he was as tall and strong as an ox, he had clenched his fists. He was afraid that if he said something inappropriate, he would punch him. Who doesn't know Zhang Hong'ai's strength nearby? I'm afraid that if he doesn't beat him to death, he will have to suffer some hardships. He is alone, and if he does get beaten, he will deserve it at most. He will be sued to the county, and at most the county will sentence him to exile. But Yingzhou is the base camp for the exiles. Where can they be sent if they are exiled again? He is not afraid of beating him, and it is not painful to sue him. The government does not want to deal with such a scoundrel. I don't know what kind of evil wind happened today, but during the Chinese New Year, he actually came to his store to cause trouble. The shopkeeper didn't know what he said that made Tai Sui unhappy. He clasped his hands together bitterly. Zhang Hezi, what I say is not pleasant to the ears. Don't care about me. If you take the silk away, won't it make it difficult for me to live? It's the new year and I have a family to support. In this way, I will give it to you. You have a piece of cloth and you choose a color, okay. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1016. The shopkeeper thought he had bowed his head, but Zhang Hong'ai was still angry. When he was about to speak, Lily pulled him. Forget it, just choose the blue one. Daughter-in-law. Zhang Hong'ai was about to retort, but Lily shook his head. He gritted his teeth, not wanting to refute her words in front of outsiders, but the shopkeeper said that the wife he married was not an official wife and could not wear silk. But it stabbed him deep in his heart. He was just a white man, so he felt uncomfortable after hearing this. He was originally from the Marquis house before, so he probably felt even more sour when he heard this. When the shopkeeper heard that Lily had chosen the color, he was relieved. He was afraid that Zhang Hong'ai would play tricks later, so he quickly got something to tie up the cyan cloth. When Lily was about to step forward to catch it, Zhang Hong'ai stepped forward and took it. Put it under his arm, and took out a handful of copper coins from his arms. He didn't even count them. It was about 34 coins. He threw it on the counter and said, "Take it and shut your stinky mouth. Next time if you hear anyone being rude to my wife again, I will knock out your front teeth." Hearing his anger, the shopkeeper realized that what he had just said about his wife's inability to wear silk must have offended him. He originally thought that losing money would avoid disaster, but he did not expect that he paid some money himself, although it was not as good as this roll of cloth. Money, but having money is worse than having nothing at all. I breathed a sigh of relief and kept saying, I'm sure. Then I wiped my sweat and took a lot of scissors and needlework as Lily asked, and also picked up some scraps. Buletin took a large package and gave it to Lily, and then sent the two of them out. Spending dozens of pennies to buy such a large roll of cloth was a huge advantage. The shopkeeper even said that it was given to him. If he hadn't insisted on giving the money, he would have saved the money. However, the more Zhang Hong'ai thought about it, the more aggrieved he became. When he went out, he had a gloomy face. Lily said something. His sleeves were a little helpless. Okay, everyone has come out, why are you still angry? What's the point of being angry with such a person? You still throw money at him. How stupid. She touched his arm with her finger, and the fingertips penetrated through the tattered coat. When the needle touched his wrist, the force was much lighter, but Zhang Hong'ai's heart was still numb. Hear Lily talking. Then I thought about the stupid thing I had just done by throwing money at people. Zhang Hong'ai's cheeks could not help but become a little red. He was not such a face-saving person originally. If it were in the past, he would not deliberately blackmail others. But if someone wanted to give him a roll of cloth, he would be a bastard if he didn't take advantage of it. 99% of the time, he would accept it and leave. But today was different. Today Lily was by his side, and Zhang Hong'ai didn't want her to underestimate him. Somehow, by some strange coincidence, he grabbed a handful of copper coins and threw them out. Now that she was lifting them up, he felt embarrassed and embarrassed. Angry and a little regretful. Then how about I go find him and retreat? Can I get the money I gave back? Lily couldn't help but want to laugh when she heard this. The shopkeeper originally felt that he had lost money and just wanted to give it to the god of plague. If he asked for it now, he would probably fall out no matter how easy it was to bully him. After giving everything, if the two of them hadn't given up, they would have taken advantage now anyway, and asking for more would be a bit excessive. She shook her head, and Zhang Hong'ai gave up. Just thinking about what had just happened, he felt a little unhappy and remained silent. Originally he was very excited to visit the cloth shop. Zhang Hong'ai had been thinking about making clothes for Lily for a long time, but he didn't expect such a result. His excitement was dampened by half, and he was not interested when he went shopping again. So the two went to buy cotton again. Seeing that the Chinese New Year was approaching and there was nothing to eat at home, she went to weigh some melon seeds, peanuts, beans, etc., until she bought a lot. When she was about to turn around and leave, Lily hesitated. I want to go to the inn and see my elder brother. The Zhou family was originally a literary and Confucian family. From the time when their ancestors became successful, they always put study first, and their bodies were not strong. After the Zhou family's accident, many people in the family died and fell ill. In the plot, Zhou Beihe was bought by Zhang Hong'ai. She survived, but unfortunately her parents had been pampered all their lives. When they were exiled, the journey was far away, and their elders got sick and passed away. Her parents dragged their breath to Yingzhou. The climate here was harsh, and the living environment was not good. Zhou's father Zhou the mother did not survive a few days, and soon died in Yingzhou. In the plot, Zhou Beihe did remember having an eldest brother, but because the Zhou family is a family that has been passed down for generations, the upbringing of their children is strict. After the age of 7, men and women sit separately, so the relationship between the two brothers and sisters is not the same. Deep, once their parents passed away, although the two brothers and sisters still had a blood relationship, their relationship was not deep. In addition, Zhou Lily was immersed in her own fear and panic at that time, so naturally she couldn't care about her elder brother, and she didn't know what would happen to her elder brother later. When he arrived in Yingzhou, he didn't get sick like his family members, but Zhou Beihe, the eldest brother, was not in strong health either. I wonder if he could survive in Yingzhou. Zhang Hong'ai was stunned for a moment when he heard her mention that she still had relatives. He started to have a gloomy face, worried about what the shopkeeper said, and he didn't even look happy when he went shopping. He looked expressionless. But now he heard Lily say that he was going to see his eldest brother. When he thought that he might meet his future brother-in-law, he became a little nervous for no reason, and his cheeks began to turn red. He looked down at his feet. He was still wearing broken straw sandals. Thinking of Lily coming from the palace, my brother-in-law, whom I had never met before, might not like his current appearance, so he secretly screamed in his heart. He didn't tidy up when he came out, and looked slovenly. Think about what he would be like in the future. My daughter probably wouldn't want to marry someone like me. She didn't like her at first sight. He thought that if he had a daughter in the future, if she was like Lily, she might marry someone else, and he felt a little sour in his heart. But then he realized that he had thought too much. Currently, he has not even written a single horoscope. The marriage was not yet complete, so it was not certain whether she would give birth to a daughter, but it was possible that she would give birth to a son. Thinking of this, he felt a little happy again. However, Zhang Hong'ai was not happy for long, and then he remembered that he had thought too far. The first thing she mentioned was that she wanted to see her brother-in-law. Sons and daughters were an afterthought, so she could not mention them for the time being. Now Lily doesn't want to marry herself. If her brother-in-law has a bad impression of her again, he will definitely object to her. If he objects, then, won't it be harder for him to please her? Fortunately, I have never been an executioner before, otherwise if I really wanted to do it, my brother-in-law, whom I have never met, would probably think less of me. Thinking of this, Zhang Hong'ai cried with tears in his eyes and wanted to refuse, but it was common for a daughter-in-law to miss her family. He racked his brains and couldn't think of any excuse to dismiss her idea. In the end, he had to shamelessly discuss with her. Why don't you go back today and come back tomorrow? Look, it's already getting late. He didn't wash his hair or take a shower today. He wore the shabbiest clothes and had a beard. Usually he was too lazy to clean it up, so he never did. I scraped it, and now I regret it so much that my intestines are blue. He used to be unkempt in the past, but now he realizes how powerful he is. He was not handsome before. Beautiful men in the Diqi dynasty liked to wear powder and carry sachets. He once heard a book saying that the noble ladies in Diqi loved those who rode horses. However, there is a man whose horse hooves are fragrant, but in Yingzhou there is no place to buy even the rouge that women usually wear. Where can I get these things now? Fortunately, something happened at his brother-in-law's house, and he probably had no money to dress up like himself, so Zhang Hong'ai felt a little more comfortable. His face turned blue and white at one time, and he smiled at the corners of his mouth, and showed a ferocious look at other times. Occasionally, he reached out to touch his face and chin. His eyebrows were wrinkled extremely tightly from time to time, and then loosened again, as if he was crazy. Lily. Seeing this made my scalp go crazy. I couldn't help but reach out and hit him. Be more serious. Ouch. When she hit him, Zhang Hong'ai screamed instinctively. He decided not to visit his brother-in-law today. Anyway, the days were long and there was no time to rush. He put all the things in one hand and didn't care. The scream he just made attracted surprised looks from the people around him. They quickly put their arms around Lily's waist and pulled her towards home. Daughter-in-law, let's not go now. You see, it's getting late. If you go to the inn and come back, it will be dark. Let me tell you, in Yingzhou, no one dares to go out after dark. There are villains outside. It's dangerous. Human, listen to me, let's go back and clean up tomorrow, and I'll accompany you again. As soon as Zhang Hong'ai finished speaking, Lily glanced at him with disdain. There are villains in Yingzhou, who can compare to you? Lily could see the way the shopkeeper looked at him just now. He clearly regarded him as a villain, and she called him by name right away. It was obvious that Zhang Hongyi was a famous boss in the past. He was like this. The villain even uses others as a shield. Lily doesn't believe it. Although I don't know what kind of medicine he is selling in his gourd, the relationship between the original owner and the elder brother is not deep. In the plot, the two of them did not even interact with each other. What she just said was just a casual mention. If Zhang Hongyi wanted to go, the two of them would. The man stopped by to have a look. If he didn't want to go, Lily wouldn't force him to go. So after hearing what he said that he wanted to go home first, Lily also obeyed him and was led home by him, half hugging and half pulling her. After taking 2 steps, she struggled again. Don't be so frivolous. It's so unbecoming on the street. It's up to you, it's up to you. Zhang Hongyi breathed a sigh of relief. As long as she no longer insisted on visiting her future brother-in-law now, he would be happy. After returning home, Zhang Hongyi no longer struggled with the shopkeeper's attitude because he had to meet his brother-in-law. However, when he touched the cloth, he still felt a little regretful. This cloth is too thick. I should buy you silk. What you wear looks much better than what those ladies wear. How can they compare with you? To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1017. Zhang Hongyi has never been out of Yingzhou, so he doesn't know that those silks are only of the lowest quality. Even if the original owner was still living in the palace, the slightly respectable girls and women around his mother would wear dresses made of much better fabrics than the silks just now. Many. But his caring heart is much more precious than that silk. Silk is valuable, but friendship is priceless. There is an old saying that it is easy to find priceless treasures, but it is rare to find a lover. This is the truth. Lily's eyes gradually softened. She looked at Zhang Hongyi sighing, which was a little funny, but also moved her heart. Okay, it's good to be able to live with clothes to cover your body and food to satisfy your hunger. What does it matter what you wear? Wearing silk doesn't make you happy, and it's not as good as wearing coarse linen. Her words were heard in Zhang Hongyi's ears. He just thought that Lily was comforting him, and he felt more and more uncomfortable. Seeing that he lowered his head and remained silent, Lily reached out and patted him. Quickly take out your bed board. The two of them had just gone out to buy some sewing scissors. Now Lily asked Zhang Hongyi to carry the bed board out. Although he didn't know what was going on, he still obeyed and Lily threaded the thread. Okay, I took the cloth and spread it on the bed board. I marked the size with my hand, took the scissors and started cutting. Zhang Hongyi bought some cloth and let her play with it. After he finished worrying about the silk, he thought of his brother-in-law whom he was going to meet tomorrow. He stared at Lily for a while and then hid aside. Lily cut Zhang Hongyi's body size. After cutting it, she started to sew. After each piece was sewn, she stuffed the cotton into it, and used stitches to press it evenly in the middle, so that it was strong. But it took a lot of effort. After sewing for a while, she wanted to use scissors, but she couldn't find them after turning around. Lily still knew what she was putting away. She held the needle and thread in her hand and looked up. Zhang Hongyi was squatting in the corner of the yard with his back to her. She didn't know what he was doing. She called out, "Zhang Hongyi, where did you put my scissors?" He responded without turning his head, "Here I am." "Wife, please wait a moment. I don't know what he did with the scissors." Lily sat and waited for a while, then he stood up, but did not turn his head. Instead, he covered his face with his hands and raised his hands in this direction. He held the scissors in his hand. This weird look made Lily's brows jump. He reached out and pulled his sleeve, What did you do? Zhang Hongyi held scissors in his hand, and when she pulled it, he didn't dare to struggle. Worried that the scissors would prick her, Lily just stretched out her hand and pulled, and saw his sleeve move away. His originally black face with unruly beard was now cut in a mess on his chin and lip. He couldn't see it himself, so he just cut it without looking in the mirror. In some places, the skin was even punctured and there were beads of blood. Straight up. Lily was a little angry and a little funny, so she quickly put down her needle and thread and motioned for him to squat down and wipe it for him. He knelt down docilely, and Lily wiped away the blood drops for him. He was not afraid of the pain, and even smiled playfully. "Why are you tormenting yourself? You're not good looking to begin with, and you still insist on poking your face to pieces," she scolded, but her movements were gentle. Zhang Hongyi narrowed his eyes, and when he heard Lily's words, he just said he. Smile. "What's not good looking? I used to have a beard and it made me look older. If I shaved off my beard, he might be a handsome man too." He was thick-skinned and had no embarrassment at all when he praised himself. Lily couldn't help but laugh. He made a sound and reached out to slap him on the face. He had pricked his face when he was cutting his beard and didn't see him scream, but now he slapped him and he screamed fiercely. Lily took the scissors and carefully trimmed his dog-gnawed beard. Zhang Hongyi squatted in front of her obediently. She trimmed the remaining beard. Except for the few minor wounds on his face, Zhang Hongyi it does look much more pleasing to the eye. Originally he had a slovenly beard, but he looked almost in his early 30s even though he was only in his 20s. Now that he has shaved off his beard, although his face still looks dark and fierce, it is unexpected. I wonder if it is. Lily was used to seeing his messy appearance, so Leng Hui had to clean it up, and he indeed looked much younger. Looking closely, he is not related to a handsome man, but he also has thick eyebrows and big eyes, and a face that is very masculine. If it were in modern times, he would be considered a tough guy. Lily changed the look on his face for him. After wiping off the beard residue, he signaled him to take his scissors and wash them. He had nothing to do in the afternoon, so he squatted beside him and asked, "What does brother-in-law like to eat? What kind of things does he like? What kind of words does he like to say? What kind of clothes does he like to wear?" It's almost more detailed than asking the man and woman about each other's basic information during a blind date. As for the situation of the original eldest brother, Lily doesn't know. The original owner didn't even know what the eldest brother of the Zhou family liked, and the relationship between the two brothers and sisters was not that good. In addition, they were raised separately when they were young. The men were outside and the women were in the courtyard. Sometimes they were separated from each other even when greeting the elders for a month. I haven't seen her a few times, especially as she got older. The original owner learned needlework, housekeeping, rules for women, while her eldest brother wanted to learn Confucianism and the 4 books and 5 classics for scientific examinations. And had no contact with him at all. In my memory, he was just a pale, thin, yet mature young man. At this time, Zhang Hongyi was asking for more details. Lily was a little annoyed by the questions, so she stretched out her legs and kicked him. "Go further away and don't bother me. Just go and have a look. If you bother me again, if a needle sticks into my hand later, I will hit you." "What do you mean by casual visit?" Zhang Hongyi was a little depressed. He was nervous all the way and was thinking about it when he came back. He was afraid that he would embarrass her, but her attitude was so understated. He was a little unwilling and muttered, but he really didn't dare to argue. He was deeply afraid that the needle in his wife's hand would fall into her flesh. When he thought of the pain and the possibility of bleeding, he became nervous again and hurriedly wanted to reach out to stop her. "Oh, don't do it. You have such delicate skin and tender flesh. It will hurt if the needle pricks you. If I don't do it, you will do it?" Lily glared at him. He was restless, and he used one method at a time to make people talk. He couldn't calm down himself, and he also made others unable to be quiet. She lost her temper, but Zhang Hongyi smiled and took out a needle and thread from the side. Maybe I can do it too, won't I still be unable to learn? After saying that, he reached out to rummage through the basket, but some things do require talent. He could break a needle with 2 fingers, but in the end he couldn't even thread the needle and thread. The shopkeeper gave him 3 needles in total, so after destroying 2 of them, Lily couldn't bear it anymore and took off her shoes to beat him, so he covered his face and ran away. Although Lily moved quickly throughout the whole day, she only made a quarter of the clothes. After catching up with work at night, she had only finished sewing the front and back hems, and the sleeves were still unfinished. Zhang Hongyi urged her to sleep, saying that she would have to do it tomorrow. Go out. He went out again in the afternoon and bought some melon seeds and snacks to seal up. He didn't eat them himself. When he got up early the next morning, he asked Lily to tie his hair again and tie it neatly. The 2 of them went out with the gift. When they came to the post house, they heard that Zhou Deguan had already redeemed himself with some silver and left with his wife and children. The Zhou family is an exiled Sin slave. Generally, when a Sin slave like this comes to Yingzhou, where the sky is high and the emperor is far away, as long as he can get the money, he can redeem himself, and only needs a small 9th grade official. Took a pen and scratched his name from the crime book. There was no need to report it to the government anymore. He asked about the date and was told that he left 4 months ago. He had been away for so long, so he probably knew that his sister had been bought, but he didn't mention it. The most important thing was that Zhou Deguan had money to redeem himself and his wife and children. When Zhou Beihe bought it only cost 5 cents to come down. He had money but refused to help his sister. Lily felt a chill in her heart when she heard this. She grabbed Zhang Hongyi's hand and whispered, "Forget it, go back." Zhang Hongyi had always been submissive to her, but this time she reached out to grab him. Not only did he not listen, but he also held Lily's hand tightly and asked with a sullen face. "So, after Mr. Zhou left, do you know where he went?" His voice was loud when he spoke, and his expression was fierce when he frowned. There were scars on his face from yesterday's shave. Zhang He's name was in the camp. Zhou is also a big one, and the people in the post office have known him before. When they heard him ask questions, they shrank their shoulders, fearing that he was going to hit someone. They say they bought a house in Jinbei Hutong to live in. I don't know if that's true. You can go there and find out. The original owner, the eldest brother, was able to redeem himself and buy a house this time. Since the Zhou family was raided, he must have left something valuable with him. But in the plot, he was clearly able to live a good life, and he knew clearly that his biological sister was still alive and was not having a good life, but he did not show up to see her once. Lily looked calm, but Zhang Hongyi couldn't bear it and held her hand. "Let's go and take a look." In fact, Lily no longer wanted to see it anymore, but Zhang Hongyi seemed to be even more angry than her and insisted on pulling her away. Someone was selling a house in Jinbei Hutong some time ago. Houses in this area of Yingzhou are not expensive. There are some people renting them, but not many buying them. What's more, the purchase of a house by Zhou Deguan's family is considered a rarity within a few miles. It was over. As soon as Zhang Hongyi and the 2 passed by, they found out after asking. The door of the room was closed tightly, and a spring curtain was posted at the door. Zhang Hongyi knocked on the door, and a female voice in the room shouted impatiently, "Here you go, why are you banging in such a hurry?" While talking, a male voice seemed to ask, "Who is outside the house?" Not long after, someone came and opened the door. It was Zhou Deguan, who was wearing a green jacket, with his hands in his sleeves, and a black leather cap. A woman in blue with white flowers stood beside him. Next to them, the two of them were startled when they saw Zhang Hong'ai when they opened the door. Official Zhou turned pale and subconsciously wanted to close the door, but Zhang Hong'ai stretched out his hand to push the door, and turned his body sideways to let Lily behind him. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1018. Madam, the woman suddenly seemed to recognize Lily and called her in disbelief. She was obviously very surprised that Lily came to her door. In the past few months, Zhou Dalin and his family finally found a place to settle down. After the house was searched, Zhou Dalin hid a small banknote in the innermost mezzanine. Because the amount was not large, he hid it. After arriving in Yingzhou, he cashed the banknote into silver, and the family, after redeeming his life and buying a house, he finally settled down. But life is definitely incomparable with the days in the Haufa before. During the Chinese New Year, the family also reduced their clothing and diet. Unlike when I was in the Haufa before, when I was thirsty, I would rinse my mouth with birds' nests, but when I was hungry, I would eat food carefully prepared by the chef. Now everything needs to be done by oneself. Mrs. Zhou used to have no fingers in the spring water, and the family lived a tight life. The unsatisfactory life and the change in the quality of life made both the couple become yellow and thin. In comparison, Lily has changed a lot, although when she was exiled along the road, Zhou Lily was tortured to the point of almost dying like Zhou Dalin's family. When she arrived in Yingzhou, she was bought at the price of a dead person. Then Zhou Dalin was not without money, but at the critical moment, Zhou Dalin had to save 5 cents, and good steel should be used on the cutting edge. Secondly, it was because Zhou Beihe was seriously ill at that time. She was dead, she was so thin, and no one said she would survive. When Zhou Dalin heard that she had been bought, he thought that if he had spent a few pennies to buy the sister who was about to die of illness, 5 pennies would have been wasted. You can still hear a sound when you throw the few pennies into the water. If it were a different girl who stayed, not only would there be no sound, but I'd probably have to pay for the coffin, so he didn't say anything and let Lily be bought out. Afterwards, I found out that she seemed to have been bought by a butcher named Zhang and brought home as his wife. The person who was originally thought to be dead, now seems not only not dead, but actually alive and well, and seems to be living better than Zhou Dalin's family, whom they haven't seen for several months. She looked much plumper. He was wearing an old coat that obviously didn't fit him. Although he had washed it clean, it still gave off a shabby air. Standing next to her was a young man in his 20s, who looked a bit fierce. That look seemed to want to eat someone. Strong and muscular. Zhou Dalin stood in front of him, his height was only as high as his chest, even because Zhang Hong'ai was standing in front of the door. Zhou Dalin subconsciously took several steps back. Zhang Hong'ai was holding a few tied things wrapped in brown paper bags. When he saw that the original owner's sister-in-law seemed to recognize Lily, he called out her name and was sure that his brother-in-law lived here. He was tall and looked past Zhou Dalin and his wife into the room. There was an oil lamp burning in the house, and it seemed that the child's laughter could still be vaguely heard. Although the two of them left early today, it took them a while to get to the post house, and they also learned about this from the post house. After walking around the near north alley for a while, it was already evening. The Zhou family seemed to have prepared dinner. The children inside were eating, but they thought the food was not delicious. At this time, they shouted at the top of their lungs. "Mother, mother, I want to eat braised lion's head, I don't want to eat this." Zhou Dalin frowned tightly, while sister-in-law Zhou looked embarrassed. She stretched out her hand to pick up the things Zhang Hong'ai sent. Zhou Dalin asked coldly. "What are you here for?" He obviously didn't have much affection for this sister. When they met now, he was not as caring about this girl as Zhang Hong'ai imagined, and even asked about his 18 generations of ancestors. Although Zhou Dalin did not interrogate him about his origins or various circumstances, which seemed to have solved the problem that Zhang Hongyi cared about most. He was not happy at all at this moment. Zhou Dalin didn't ask, which showed that he didn't value this girl at all. He didn't care what kind of person his sister married, and he didn't care what his brother-in-law was like. I was nervous for a long time when I came here. Yesterday, I even shaved off my beard just for this meeting. I got up early in the morning and worked hard for a long time. If he had known this would be the result, he might as well have let his little wife sleep in at home, so as not to wake up early in the morning and drive for a long time, only to get such a cold look in return. I just came to see my eldest brother, sister-in-law, and nephew. Seeing Zhou Dalin's attitude, Lily knew better. Zhou Dalin obviously didn't want to see her very much, and looked cold and bored. After hearing her words, he nodded and pretended to close the door. Now that you have seen it, you should go back. Follow your father at home, follow your husband when you get married, and follow your son after your husband dies. From now on, just listen to your man's words and live a good life. If something happens to the Zhou family now, the tree will fall and the hosen will scatter. I can't help you with anything. You don't have to come and see me in the future, and I don't have any etiquette to reply to you, so that's it. He himself is not having a good life now, and he is struggling to rely on the banknotes he hid before. The family can barely survive the day. Although Lily is his sister, when a disaster strikes, even a husband and wife will have to split their time, let alone a brother and sister who have no feelings for each other. What's more, it would be fine if the husband Lily married was someone like Prince Ye in the past. Now the eldest daughter of a noble family, Zhou Lily, who was originally engaged to Prince Ye, was now sold to a butcher for 5 cents. Daughter-in-law, Zhou Dalin felt a little embarrassed when he thought about it. He looked down on this girl, and he didn't want to hang out with such a relative. He didn't want to support Beihe, nor did he want to be a brother-in-law like Zhang Hongyi, a gangster with a not-so-famous background, so he reluctantly gave him a few words. Regardless of the embarrassed smile on Sister Zhou's face next to him, he reached out and wanted to open the door. Close. Zhang Hongyi's face was as dark as ink, and Zhou Dalin's words just now sounded extremely sharp in his ears. In the past, he actually agreed with Zhou Dalin's so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues for women, but now when he heard Zhou Dalin talk about it, he only felt indescribable alienation and disgust in his heart. What does it mean to obey your father at home and your husband when you get married? The wife he bought has never been a submissive person. She seems quiet on the surface, but in fact she has a tough temper and big ideas. He also likes to see how she looks when she gets angry and chases him. What Zhou Dalin said belittled her, making Zhang Hongyi always want to find some ground for her. Most importantly, what does it mean to follow a son after his husband dies? He was very lucky. He wanted to live to be 100 years old and accompany Lily until she grew old. Looking at the 2 men with their children and grandchildren, Zhou Dalin dared to curse him. The 2 of them walked together, but he didn't care. He usually walked around in the street. She was used to the household collecting pigs, but Lily was different. After walking for such a long time, she was already hungry. Even though Zhou Dalin had already served dinner at home, he didn't even say a polite word to the 2 of them for staying down for dinner. In normal times, Zhang Hongyi would not like a rotten scholar like Zhou Dalin. Not to mention that he would not eat this kind of food, he would not even enter the house even if he was invited. Also kicked. But this was Lily's eldest brother's house. Zhang Hongyi was so angry that he clenched his fists, but in the end he remained silent. It's all his fault, it's his fault that he's so incompetent, that's why Lily is looked down upon by others, and even her eldest brother is acting like Fang to embarrass her and show her shame. Just when he was feeling a little embarrassed, Lily put her hand on his wrist, and just as she was about to speak to comfort him, Zhou Dalin's voice rang out in the room. When these 2 people come over from now on, they are not allowed to enter the house. A good woman, who is supposed to be obedient and virtuous, has a fiancé but marries another woman. What kind of good thing is she? She has forgotten the ancestral motto of the Zhou family. Sister-in-law Zhou's voice sounded somewhat solemn. When she heard Zhou Dalan's words, she seemed to be explaining for Lily, and replied softly. Perhaps he was forced to do so. Look at that man, how can he be his match? If she wanted to keep her chastity but was forced to do so, she should die. She lived an ignoble existence and was willing to marry such a trafficker and a pawn in order to survive. Fortunately, her parents passed away now, otherwise she would have been really angry to death. It would be a pity. I didn't want to have a marriage like that of Prince Ye. Zhou Dalan sighed, and sister-in-law Zhou seemed to ask, did you throw away the things they sent? The two of them seemed to be walking into the house, and their voices gradually became quieter. Zhou Dalan could only be heard pondering for a moment. It's better not to throw it away. The situation at home is difficult now. Let's save what we can. Hearing this, Zhang Hongyi couldn't bear it anymore. He clenched his fists, stretched out his legs and kicked the door hard. His strength was extremely strong. The two wooden doors that originally seemed to be solid, were knocked down by his heavy kick. It swayed, making a pitiful creak sound, then shook a few times, and then fell down with a bang sound, bringing up a large amount of dust. The humiliation of his wife made Zhang Hongyi feel more painful than being slapped in the face. As soon as the door panel fell down, Zhou Dalan and his wife, who had not yet entered the house, were startled. They turned around in panic. He was so thin. The back of his body was already a little bent, and his twisting and turning movements especially highlighted this point. He shouted in a panic, "What are you going to do? What are you doing?" Zhang Hongyi clenched his fists. He was not a good person to begin with. If it weren't for the fact that Zhou Dalan was Beihe's eldest brother, he wouldn't have had to be so solemn. Now that he is here and being humiliated, he, regardless of whether he had trespassed into a private house or not, he strode directly towards Zhou Dalan and his wife. The ground made a dong 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 sound with every step, which frightened Zhou Dalan so much that he couldn't help but retreat. At the same time, he stretched out his hand like a chicken. He lifted Mrs. Zhou up, and amidst the woman's screams, he forcefully snatched back what Mrs. Zhou was holding. "Give it back to me." To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1019. The brown rope tied on the butter paper was hooked in Sister Zhou's hand. Zhang Hongyi pulled hard, and the brown rope almost broke Sister Zhou's fingers. She screamed twice, but Zhou Dalan did not dare to come over. Do her a favor. Zhang Hongyi had no idea about hitting women. He always treated people only as outsiders and insiders, so he would not be soft-hearted towards sister-in-law Zhou just because she was a woman. He pushed sister-in-law Zhou hard until she hit her. After pushing the woman to the ground, he grunted, stared at Zhou Dalan, who turned pale with fright, and strode out. As soon as he left, Zhou Dalan breathed a sigh of relief, and then his face turned red with anger, and he cursed, "It's an insult to gentlemen, how can it be justified?" Lily glanced at Dalan Zhou in the room, and then at sister-in-law Zhou, who was lying on the ground and crying. Zhang Hongyi came back from grabbing the things and was still angry, so he took her hand and left. The two of them had been out for a day, and it was already dark when they returned. Yingzhou City was not peaceful after dark. What Zhang Hongyi said yesterday was not all about Lily, but when he walked beside Lily, even if Xiao Xiao was there again, he saw Zhang Hongyi's face. I don't dare to have any ideas about the two of them despite their stature. There were gradually fewer pedestrians around, and the merchants who had set up stalls during the day all closed their stalls and went back. Zhang Hongyi squatted down in front of Lily and motioned for her to climb on his back. After walking for a day, Lily was indeed tired. When she saw Zhang Hongyi's actions, she was not polite to him and immediately pounced on him. Zhang Hongyi was in a bad mood, and he didn't talk as much as usual. Lily knew that he was unhappy because of what happened before, so she teased him. How come you got the things you sent out today? Finished. She paused and said, when I wanted to open it and eat a little bit in the morning, I wasn't allowed to touch it. As soon as she finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi's body trembled and he almost threw her off his back. He was so hairy at first sight. Lily lay on his back and could clearly see the roots of his neck and ears that were slowly turning red. In the morning, she said she didn't need to make breakfast and just took a few snacks to fill her stomach. At that time, Zhang Hongyi looked like these packets of snacks and melon seeds, and she was not allowed to eat them. He also said that if she really likes him later, going to buy some tomorrow. Today he gave it away and snatched it back. When Lily mentioned it, Zhang Hongyi blushed, who knew he was such a person. If I had known, I would have eaten it for you originally. He did not want to please his brother-in-law, so he started from his side. What? It's a pity that this brother-in-law is not as good as he imagined. I originally thought I would raise a girl like Lily. The elder brother was not far behind. He really went to visit him with a very pious heart, and he didn't expect to suffer such a humiliation. His surname is Zhang in Yingzhou City. When have you ever suffered such a loss? This is his territory. But this time he not only failed to protect himself, but also his wife was humiliated, but the other party was something he couldn't hit. Zhang Hongyi felt heavy and confused at this moment. If it weren't for his identity, Lily wouldn't have been implicated by him. Thinking of this, his expression became a little depressed again. Daughter-in-law, he doesn't want you. I will want you in the future. I will treat you better. Why obey your father at home, obey your husband when you get married? Bah! I will obey you. He couldn't say anything nice, so he could only use his own method. Trying his best to comfort the injured Lily, what he said was not pleasant, but it was simple and moving. Lily felt weak in her heart and reached out to touch his neatly combed hair today. His ears were a little red again. From behind, you can vaguely see the corners of his grin, almost reaching the back of his head. I don't listen to him, Lily replied casually. She really didn't take Joe Dallin into her heart. She was not the original Joe Lily, so she would not be angry because of Joe Dallin's words. If she hadn't casually mentioned Zhang Hongyi's story yesterday, in her heart, she actually didn't want to go out specifically today. After she said this, Zhang Hongyi nodded, and then he lifted her up as if he remembered something. But wife, please tell me, who is Prince Ye, and do you have a fiancé? His heart was sour, as if something had been left for a long time and fermented. You and I, tell me carefully, why haven't I heard you mention it before? He remembered what Lily said before, that she didn't want to marry him, and he thought that Lily didn't like him before. Today, when he heard what Joe Dallin said about his fiancé, and what kind of prince he was, Zhang Hongyi thought maybe Lily liked him, so she didn't want to marry him. Thinking again of Joe Dallin's words that he should keep chastity for Prince Ye, he felt angry and a little uncomfortable. When he asked, he wanted Lily to explain, but after thinking about it, who was she? She had said before that she didn't like herself, and she couldn't even explain it to him. Zhang Hongyi carried her on his back in despair, feeling a little heavy in his steps for a moment. Lily felt his tense body and lay on his shoulder. After thinking for a while, she told him the original grudges between Zhou and Ye's families. The Zhou family is based on Confucianism. They have been serving as officials since the founding of the previous dynasty. When the Qi state was established, Taizhu was thirsty for talents. She started from the origin of the Zhou family and talked about the embarrassment of the Zhou family in this generation. Zhang Hongyi, I have never been involved in this before. I just heard these rich people fighting for power. I thought that the powerful people would be able to sit back and relax. I didn't expect that the poor have the troubles of the poor, and the big men also have the troubles of the big men. Worry. My father took refuge in the prince, and he was afraid that the second prince would gain power in the future. The family is the confidant of the second prince. In order to please the second prince, he decided to marry me and the family. She told the story of the marriage between the original owner and the prince. To put it lightly, when Zhang Hong'ai heard her say this, it seemed that there was no romantic relationship between the two of them, and she didn't seem to have any admiration for Ye Shize. He felt a little relieved at first, but Zhang Hong'ai felt a little bit in his heart. At a loss. These battles for the throne sounded to him like a fairy tale, like a story from a play told by a storyteller. They seemed to be two worlds away from him. Only now did he realize that it turned out that while she was drinking with her brothers and worrying about how to get money for the next meal, the family she lived in was seeking great wealth. He only wanted to have plenty of food and drink, while others wanted to be rich and wealthy. This gap stuck in Zhang Hong'ai's heart like a thorn in his throat. In the past, he only felt that he had two hands and that there was no shame in relying on hard work to make a living. He only felt that although his writing was not as good as others, he had some strength and could be worthy of this charming young lady. Apart from being illiterate, he did not feel that he had anything. The place is much different from others, but now the real gap is in front of me. Is it not just something that can be overcome by studying? Zhang Hong'ai only felt a wave of cold air rising from the soles of his feet. His originally brisk steps began to become heavier, and his legs seemed to be filled with lead. The girl on his back seemed to him to be as light as a feather, and he moved with almost no effort. He could hold her firmly, but now he realized that her weight in his heart was far heavier than a feather. The heavy thing was not her weight, but the thought of responsibility, joy, and wanting to marry her. But what does he want to marry now? Are you shouting over and over to follow her? Her ex-fiancé was so outstanding, he came from a noble family, he was talented in literature and martial arts, and he was said to be the emperor's favorite, so what could she compare to him? Apart from his passion, his surname Zhang has nothing. Zhang Hong'ai suddenly felt a little flustered. He was not afraid of his opponents, but he was a little confused about his future. No one taught him his responsibilities and obligations, but he, a toad, wanted to eat swan meat beyond his own ability, so he put his responsibilities and obligations on himself. Obligations were put on his shoulders. People say that all troubles are caused by oneself. Zhang Hong'ai realized the essence of this sentence at this time. He found that he was looking for troubles, but the trouble was that he did not want to stop this kind of existence at all. In the past, he seemed to be just as stupid as a pig or a dog. The prince was deposed, the king of Yu ascended the throne, and the Zhou family was accused of crimes and exiled. Naturally, there was no peace between me and Prince yet. He is now the emperor's new favorite. I'm afraid he has already married someone else, so let's talk about the past. It's all over. What my elder brother said was just a dream. Lily smiled slightly, feeling the depression in the big man's heart. He would not hide his mood at all. He would grin when he was happy, and jump to his feet when he was anxious. His face was sullen and unhappy, and even his steps were lost at this time. For such a man, Lily is actually a little pity that the original owner did not realize his advantages. In fact, if they only live a life of a dull couple, a person like him is far more suitable than Yeshija. There is no fame or wealth in his world, and the only love he has will be given to his own people. Unfortunately, Zhou Bei didn't want to understand him, and turned him away without giving him a chance to get close. In fact, Zhang Hong'ai is indeed a bully, but as long as Zhou Bei refuses, he will not touch her. Unfortunately, in the plot, Zhou Bei does not even have the courage to refuse. Sometimes girls always yearn for the love that everyone envies, but they don't know that being ordinary is happiness. How many people want to be ordinary and have peace of mind? For this reason, they do not hesitate to pray to Buddha and seek scriptures, but they never sleep well. But that ordinary person, when you hold it safely in your hands, You always yearn for those things in other people's hands. Things from other people's homes are always good. The Joe family was so rich and powerful at the beginning, but it was gone forever. The family died and fell apart. Now it seems that they are not as happy as Zhang Hongii. It's a pity that the people inside the wall are trying to come out, but the people outside are squeezing their heads to get in. Lily watches with cold eyes, always feeling as if she is watching a drama of various aspects of life. When he heard he said that his marriage to Yeshiza was over, Zhang Hongii couldn't help but feel a little happy. His originally depressed mood slowly recovered, and a surge of pride surged out of his heart. Daughter-in-law, don't be afraid. He is not lucky enough to marry you. I will marry you. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1020. Lily heard what he said simply and directly, and couldn't help teasing him. You want to marry me? Why do you want to marry me? Everything I have is yours. Take whatever you want. Zhang Hongii blurted out these words, and his heart gradually calmed down. Then Prince Ye, the Ye family, was not born to be the Marquis. I am still young. What are you doing? Do you know when the day will come when I won't let you wear silk and satin? After saying these words, he gradually regained his previous confidence and said with a playful smile, I will give you the money to buy some little girls to wait on you. You don't do anything, just watch over me. Buy a few little girls to serve me, or to serve you? Lily asked him, and he jumped up like a fish with scales stabbed. Of course they will serve you. What are you doing? If you want to accuse me wrongly, just put a basin on my head. Isn't that what you said yourself? I don't do anything but just guard you. What do you have to guard? His reaction was very funny, like teasing a cat. Zhang Hongii no longer looked as lost as before. Loudly. Of course you are guarding me because you are afraid that I will be beaten away. Besides me, who else can withstand your attack? They would have been beaten to death long ago. In the future, I will buy some maids and I won't let you cook anymore. If they serve you, you will serve me. Oh my wife, please don't pull your ears with the screams. The shadows of the two people became wider and wider under the moonlight. Far away, Zhang Hongii walked much faster. Be gentle, I will serve you, I will serve your ancestors. Wear pink satin, the red one goes with you, the purple one looks good too, I will buy a bunch of them from now on. If you don't wear the same clothes every day, that bitch shopkeeper will look down on you and won't let me touch the silk and satin. My wife, what is not worthy of wearing? All the cloth woven by the weaver girl in the sky can be worn. Let you wear beautiful embroidered shoes, with silk flowers on the uppers and beads strung on them. They will sway when you walk. He talked about looking forward to the future, as if he was full of energy, and this road was not far away. After Lily listened to him, I heard him talk about buying this and that for myself. Being shaken by him like this, sleepiness came over him. Zhang Hongii has a strong body and good physical strength. Lily lies on top of him. He carried it steadily. Although what he said was fantasy. But with an infectious power, he held himself firmly and lay on his warm and strong back. It was easy to feel at ease, and Lily slowly fell asleep as he rocked her. Zhang Hongii was thinking about going out yesterday, which kept her awake for a long time. She got up early today and walked for a long time. When she fell asleep, her even breathing spread on Zhang Hongii's neck. He felt it and felt slow in his heart. It slowly softened, as if it had been coated with honey, soft and sweet. Does it matter whether she was some Prince Ye's fiancée before? The important thing is that she is on his back now, so what if he is not as good as others now? Heroes don't care about their origins. Yeshiza's ancestors are heroes. If someone can start from scratch, it doesn't mean he is not good. He has plenty of strength. As long as he wants to do it, he may not be worse than Yeshiza in the future. Maybe his children and grandchildren will be the same in the future. Where is the prince? Zhang Hong'ai subconsciously slowed down his steps. He didn't want to wake up the sleeping girl on his back, so he chose a quiet and flat road, but his heart was soft, but he always wanted to say something, even if she fell asleep. Can't hear it anymore. The most important thing is to have a wedding. Ask the matchmaker to do it again. Wear a red wedding robe and a hijab on your head. She wants to have what others have, and he wants to give her what others don't have. One day, he will make these people who look down on her think that she deserves death for marrying him, and clearly see that she did not make a mistake in marrying him. When Lily woke up, she opened her eyes and was already at home. The room was quiet and Zhang Hong'ai's voice was not heard. She was sleeping deeply. She had no memory of when Zhang Hong'ai came back. He had washed his face. Even her hair and clothes were removed, but she didn't know it. Under the moonlight, she saw that the bed opposite was deserted and there was no one around. Zhang Hong'ai was not in the room, which was strange in the middle of the night. She had just slept for a while and was not too sleepy at this time. Lily put on her clothes and turned over. The door of the hall outside was unlocked and the oil lamp was not lit. She groped out and heard a male voice trembling outside the courtyard door. "Brother, you only have this chance. Don't miss it. It will never come back. I have just told you that your little lady was born into a wealthy family, and your previous fiancé was not a man in the pool. Brother, what do you want? She is willing to work with you, how can she do it without any ability? If you don't have status, she will never be willing to work with you. Deng does his who is recruiting people. If you think about it, the brothers will apply for it later." Zhang Hong'ai didn't say anything. Lily was a little far away just now. The two people spoke in a soft voice and couldn't hear clearly. When she got closer, she only heard Zhang Hong'ai's deep voice reply. "Let me think about it and I'll give you an answer tomorrow." When the other person heard what he said, he knew that although he didn't say it, he probably agreed in his heart. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and said repeatedly, "That's how it should be, brother. Then I'll take my leave. Hurry up." Yeah, at this moment, Zhang Hong'ai's tone no longer had the usual playful smile, but it was indescribably serious. Lily felt something was wrong in her heart and called out, "Zhang Hong'ai. Hey, here we come." Hearing Lily's voice, he hurriedly poked his head in. The person outside called sister-in-law and ran away quickly. Zhang Hong'ai came in from the outside with his head shrunken, wearing a coat. When he saw Lily coming out, he frowned. "Why are you up after sleeping so well? Did I disturb you with my words?" "I woke up right away." "Who was outside just now?" Lily yawned and asked. Zhang Hong'ai paused for a while before answering, "Yeah, you came to apologize to me. It's windy at night." "Go back to the house." He locked the door, pulled Lily, and was about to go to the house. Walking around the house, she kept mumbling that her feet were cold when she got out of bed, as if the previous seriousness was Lily's illusion. The next day, several of his sworn brothers came and they went out together. Lily asked him where he was going, but he refused to tell him. But from that day on, Zhang Hong'ai seemed to have changed. He usually spends a lot of time staring at Lily, and sometimes when he gets annoyed and Lily stretches out her hand to hit him, he doesn't dare to hide, and says confidently, "My wife, why can't I look at her? New Year's Eve is coming soon." In the past, Zhang Hong'ai spent the New Year alone, but this year there are people at home. Lily prepared the dishes early, firstly to worship his ancestors, and secondly, the two of them also wanted to be lively, so Lily prepared it a few days in advance. Even peanuts, almonds, broad beans, and other snacks were prepared. It cost a lot of money, but Zhang Hongyi seemed to be very happy. The blue cloth he bought at the beginning, and Lily also made a coat. When he took it out on New Year's Eve, Zhang Hongyi was stunned. For me. He couldn't believe it. He had never worn new clothes in his life. When his parents were alive, his father would usually give old clothes to his mother, and her mother would give him old clothes. When it was his turn, even if it was just an old dress, he would wear it. It's very exciting. But since my parents passed away, this kind of excitement has been rare. The brothers were not bad to him, but after all, as a grown man, it was difficult to notice whether his clothes fit him or not, whether his hair was messy, or whether he was cold or hungry. At most, everyone would just meet up for a drink, and there would be trouble. We worked together and worked on problems together. The new clothes Lily handed him were the first new clothes Zhang Hongyi had ever received in his life. The meaning was different. Obviously she could do it for herself first, but she chose to do it for herself first and avoided telling her before. Zhang Hongyi had been pretending to be something for the past 2 days and didn't notice her changes. He didn't realize it until now. He was a little dumbfounded. Whether the clothes are expensive or not is secondary. The key is to be remembered. The feeling in his heart made all kinds of indescribable feelings float in his mind. "Try it and see if it fits," Lily asked him to take off his coat and put it on. He was completely stunned and couldn't react, so he stared at her stupidly. Lily glared at him and reached out to pull the sweat towel around his waist. He seemed to react and grabbed the clothes instinctively. His eyes trembled. "My wife." Lily usually beats him and scolds him, but at critical moments, you can tell whether she has him in her heart or not. She doesn't say anything, but she is more touching than those who can coax. Zhang Hongyi's lips trembled and he said a complete sentence. He didn't come out. He just shouted "wife" back and forth. Lily got tired of shouting and started to slap him. He seemed to be beaten stupid. He didn't scream ouch like usual, but he grinning. The clothes were suitable for his upper body. Lily had already guessed that he was tall, so he specially made the coat bigger. He used most of a large roll of cloth by himself. Lily put it on for him. The waist was a little loose, but it was not visible even if tied with a sweat towel. However, it was a little tight under the armpits. She made a gesture and remembered the size in her mind. Zhang Hongyi touched the clothes with some curiosity. The dense and well-proportioned stitches made his heart feel so soft that it seemed to be dripping with tears. She sewed the coat very carefully, and there was no missing stitch at all. He had one at the beginning. "I was so excited about the modified clothes that I couldn't sleep for several days. Now that I got such a new clothes," Zhang Hongyi touched it again and again, reaching out to take it off. "Leave it alone, it's a pity to wear it now. We'll wear it when we get married next time." He was a little reluctant to put it on. This was the first time Lily made him this dress. He wanted to store it well and pass it on to him later. For children and grandchildren. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1021. But Zhang Hongyi felt a little reluctant after thinking about it. His daughter-in-law made the robe for him and sewed it hard. She had stayed up for several days and nights. If he had not worn it yet and passed it on to his descendants, then it's a pity. In the future, his children and grandchildren will have their own wives who can do it. If he doesn't need it, he will take it with him in the coffin when he dies. He touched his clothes and smiled, already starting to think too far. Lily glared at him and stretched out her hand to hit him. "Wear them." She looked at his feet again. He was wearing straw ropes in the winter, and some places on the edges of the soles of his feet were already cracked, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. She had seen the condition of Zhang Hongyi's feet a few days ago, and measured the size of his broken straw sandals. The soles had been pasted, but the uppers had not been opened yet. She was rushing to work tonight, and tomorrow would be the first day of the Lunar New Year. Maybe he could still finish it, so he put on a new suit and went out to pay New Year greetings. Who wants to worship with you? Let alone who wants to wear blue clothes, she cursed. Zhang Hongyi just scratched his head and giggled. He didn't know where to put his hands for a while. He was obviously so excited that he couldn't find his way. What are you doing? Don't you do it yourself? I don't have to go out to meet people. I can just do it slowly later. I can also curl up in bed when it's cold. I'll do it for you, and then I'll do my own thing. Daughter-in-law, you are so kind. Zhang Hongyi stared at her for a long time, and suddenly his face turned red. Len He reached out and hugged Lily into his arms. Before Lily could react, he lifted her up and lowered his head heavily. He kissed her on the face. The stubble had grown back after trimming it last time, making her face itchy and painful. Lily screamed and stretched out her legs to kick him, but he didn't hide. I just felt a little sorry for my new clothes and shouted over and over again. Don't kick, don't kick. It doesn't matter if you break me. Don't break my new clothes. He felt as if he was distressed after his shabby coat was stepped on twice last time. Now he put Lily down. When he came down and saw the small shoe prints on his new robe, Zhang Hongyi glanced at Lily with a somewhat melancholy look, as if he dared not speak in anger, and then took a brush and dipped it in water to clean the robe. The look of care made Lily want to laugh. The hand that was originally rubbing his face was put down. As expected, all the brothers came to pay New Year's greetings on New Year's Day. Several people brought a jar of wine, and Lily set out melon seeds and peanuts for them to drink and eat. After they were sent away at night, Zhang Hongyi said to her while she was asleep, I'm not going to kill pigs after the New Year. I want to join Deng Zhihu's army. I've already signed up. I'm afraid I have to leave in 2 days. Things were going well, there was no sign at all before, and he suddenly said he wanted to join the army. Lily frowned and rolled over from the bed to sit up. Zhang Hongyi was collecting things with his back to her. When he heard the movement behind him, he didn't dare to turn around and look at her. I left some copper coins for you, and I asked Eliaza to help me take care of you. If you need anything, just ask him to buy it. I will come back when I am free. Lily didn't say anything, and Zhang Hongyi felt a little confused. But he was deeply afraid to look at Lily's face. He was afraid that once he saw it, his hard-hearted heart would soften again. At this time, the hero is really short of breath, and the love between his son and his daughter is long. He pretended to be busy packing up the few clothes in front of him. There were not many, but he folded them over and over again, crumpled them into a ball, spread them out, and then folded them up again. Lily just stared at him coldly and said nothing. Zhang Hongyi was barely calm at first, but he didn't know if it was because he had been stared at by her for a long time, but he became more and more panicked. His movements of folding clothes became more and more, there was no order, until finally, as if I couldn't bear it any longer, I threw the single piece of clothing in my hand onto the bed with a bang, and remained silent. Why aren't you talking? After a long while, he went to pick up his own things again. Just the few pieces of clothes he picked up over and over again. Not only were they not neatly packed, but they became more and more messy. Lily did not ignoring him. Zhang Hongyi's eyes felt sour and hot. He pursed his lips tightly, fearing that he would not be able to hold back the moment he spoke. After a long time, he took several deep breaths before speaking out to break the silence of the room. Is my words useful? Anyway, you have already made your decision. Zhang Hongyi, I am not yours. You don't need to tell me where you are going. Lily pulled the quilt and turned around, her body wrapped in the quilt. Zhang Hongyi curled up into a small ball. Hearing her words, Zhang Hongyi turned his head and saw it. His heart felt like it was grabbed, it hurt and ached, and his throat was so congested that he could not speak. Daughter-in-law, wife, Don't be angry. He looked flustered, like a child who was at a loss after making a mistake. He licked his lips. It was obvious that his heart was in a mess at this time. He sat down next to Lily's bed. I wanted to reach out and touch her, but I didn't touch her yet. Seeing her hiding away, a look of hurt appeared on her face. I took my hand back, clenched it into a fist and put it on my thigh. After a while, I whispered. "Road. I know, I didn't tell you in advance. It's my fault. It's right for you to beat me and scold me." After he said this, Lily ignored him. Zhang Hong's eyelids drooped. At this time, he saw Lily was angry. Instead of being as panicked as before, he calmed down. "It's just that Ye-er is right. Good men are everywhere. Now a great opportunity is in front of me. I should seize it. Otherwise, will I miss this opportunity and spend the rest of my life killing pigs in this Yingzhou city? If I just do it now in this way, why should I marry you in such a confused way? You have been well-fed and well-fed before, so why should you make your life more tiring than before just because you married me?" When Lily heard what he said, she was about to speak, but he suppressed the heavy feeling in his heart, swallowed, stretched out his hand to hold her body down, and stopped her from getting up and turning around. "Fight once, fail. I can't get away from now on. I'll come back and continue to cultivate the fields, kill pigs, and sell meat for others, and live a good life. I also gave up that thought. If you win, no matter you like it or not, you will always have to marry me." In the plot, Zhang Hongii did not go to enlist in the army, but now he inexplicably caused such an incident. Lily has been on the mission for so long, Zhang Hongii often laughs and laughs with her. She has seen Zhang Hongii when he is furious, has seen him become angry when he is embarrassed, and has also seen him with a sullen face and anger, but she has never heard of him. Say this to yourself in such serious words. Obviously, he had already made up his mind, and now he was just telling himself. He wanted to fight for his future, which was obviously stimulated by Joe Dallin and his wife in the past few days. Men all have self-esteem. That day when he asked about Prince Ye, he didn't say anything, but he probably still cared about it in his heart. Lily suddenly felt a little heavy in her heart. "Don't be angry," he approached cautiously, and his tone was a little soft. Lily closed her eyes. "Is it useful for me to be angry?" When Zhang Hongii heard what she said, he shut up and said nothing. Obviously it was useless for her to get angry. This man usually seems to be easy to bully, but he also has a stubborn side. When he is sure of something, he always has to be bumped into before turning around. He leaned on Lily, his hands still covering his chest, and the look on his face alternated with sadness. Happiness. The sky was getting brighter, and neither of them had a sound sleep that night. Lily got up early to light the fire and cook. Zhang Hongii packed a package and came out. He couldn't bear to wear the cotton robe that Lily had made for him before, but he put it in the package. A big, thick weight. Before the porridge was ready, footsteps sounded outside and someone knocked on the door. "Brother, are you okay?" Zhang Hongii carefully looked at Lily's expressionless face, and said hey in a small voice. He stared at Lily without raising his voice any louder. This sound was like a pigeon's call, and he realized that something was wrong. He pretended to be clearing his throat, and pretended to say hey several times in a row. Lily almost laughed, but pretended not to hear. The people outside seemed to be impatient with waiting and knocked on the door a few more times. Zhang Hongii did not dare to say anything this time. He glanced at Lily first. Lily picked up the poker and stood up. He was startled and subconsciously stepped back. Taking a step forward, he saw that Lily didn't hit him at all, but went out with the poker in hand. Zhang Hongii followed step by step, and the courtyard door was opened. Ye-er and others packed a package and carried it on their backs, and came in one after another. "Brother! Which one of you proposed to join the army? Zhang Hongyi followed Lily, like a frustrated little daughter-in-law, dejected and unable to raise his head. As soon as Lily opened her mouth, the brothers noticed her, and they were all a little surprised when they saw her. Her hair was only tied up with a piece of cloth, her face was pure, and her eyes were calm and intimidating. When she squinted her eyes to look at people, she seemed to be happy or angry. The brothers vaguely remembered seeing Lily last time, but she was only thin. I had a weak impression, but I didn't expect that in just a few months, he would become so agile. No wonder Zhang Hongyi changed his mind and wanted to join the army. Zhang Hongyi had no ability to protect such a girl, but he couldn't protect her. Yes, it's my second brother. Lily looked at the few people. The brothers looked embarrassed to her. Delioza stammered and pointed at Yeir. Lily remembered what she heard from Zhang Hongyi last night. Yeir, you're right, a good man has his ambitions in all directions. He couldn't help but laugh, and reached out to stroke his hair. The brothers didn't understand the meaning of this smile, and they all giggled like hee, but Zhang Hongyi secretly yelled that it was not good. Sure enough, the next moment, Lily held the poker in her hand and swung it towards Yeir. I told you to let him join the army, and to encourage him to run away. Yeir was beaten unconscious. After receiving 2 blows, Lily did not restrain her strength these few times. Even though he was wearing a thick cotton coat, the blows still hurt. He was dumbfounded, subconsciously stretched out his hands to hold his head, and glanced at Zhang Hongyi, brother. But he saw that his elder brother didn't even dare to look at his face and looked away. To be continued.